You're listening to Elevating Early Childhood. I'm Vanessa Levin, and I help teachers of preschool and pre-K teach better, save time, and live more. I have two questions for you. Question number one, are you sick and tired of all the extra demands being placed on you as a teacher? And question number two, does it feel like more and more work is getting piled on your plate every day? Then you're in luck, because today's episode is all about learning how to advocate for yourself and how to stop sacrificing your personal and family time for the sake of the kids. And joining me for this episode is a former magician turned teacher. He's a master of entertaining, educating, and inspiring, but don't ask him to perform magic tricks at your school assembly. As a professional consultant and speaker, he's keynoted the biggest conferences and spoken to audiences all over the world. It's none other than my friend and amazing mentor, Pat Quinn. So welcome to the show, Pat. We are so glad to be chatting with you today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and when I started thinking about topics that I know that our listeners wanted to hear about, I immediately thought of all the problems they're having right now with saying no or setting boundaries. And I know that you've been doing some work in this space recently. So can you maybe help us out a little bit? Help us ease the frustration or the stress or the anxiety or whatever it is we're experiencing right now?
Absolutely. I help people every single day in their jobs and in their personal lives set boundaries, persuade other people, and most importantly, learn how to say no. Learn how to say no to working, at odd hours. Learn how to say no to being available 24/7. Learn how to say no to an extra duty that wasn't your part of what you signed up for. Just
Right.
learning how to say yes to themselves and no to someone else without feeling guilty, without feeling bad, and without worrying about it and having so much stress during the rest of your week. And so I'd love to share specific things. And the very first thing I want to hit right off the bat, Vanessa, is this idea of clarity. One of the reasons people have trouble saying no is because they don't have clarity themselves
Right.
of what they want to say yes to and what they want to say no to. And I know this in any conversation, the person who is the most certain, the person who has the most clarity, will probably win that conversation, will probably get what they want out of that conversation. And the person who is less certain, the person who has less clarity, is probably the one who's going to end up agreeing to things that they didn't want to do or be put in a position where they're going to feel guilty for saying no to something that they don't want to do. And so the first thing I would advise everybody to do is before you go into a conversation, or even before you start a week where you might get blindsided by a conversation, set some of your own boundaries. Get your own clarity on what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. This is a great exercise to do at the start of any month. It's a great exercise to do over the new year. I know everybody's going to celebrate New Year's Eve, but a great activity to do on New Year's Eve, or a great activity to do any time that you want to kind of reset, is to sit down and get clear. What am I willing to do as part of this job? What am I not willing to do as part of this job? What am I willing to do for parents? What am I not willing to do? What am I willing to do for my boss or my colleagues? What am I not willing to do? The person who has clarity on that is going to be in such a better position to say yes and no to the things they want to than the person who goes into the conversation without that clarity, and then
Right.
having certainty during the conversation, not wavering. Because if you go into the conversation, you're like, well, I don't know, I suppose, no, I think I'm not going to. The person who's the most certain is going to
Mhm.
win that every single time.
Well, that's really interesting, because I myself has struggled with saying no for forever, and but when you're talking, of course, and first of all, I want to say, why didn't you tell me all this a long time ago, Pat? I've known you for more than 10 years, but I will say that when you were talking, I was thinking about, like, a little light bulb went off in my head, because I remember there were certain boundaries that I would not let be crossed when I was in the classroom, and one of them was, and this is really strange, but it's just, hey, whatever. I refused to go to the grocery store during the school week. I refused. So when it comes to school, it was always, oh, we're going to have XYZ, goodie table party, whatever it is, in the teacher's lounge on Friday. Everybody brings something and sign up. I would just say, no, I'm not going to the grocery store at 6 o'clock at night on a Thursday to get, something silly that nobody's going to eat, nobody wants. So I just said no. And I was always fearful of doing that because people would say I wasn't a team player, or they would think I didn't like them or whatever. I always felt guilty about it. And so that's definitely the part I could probably get clear on here. But that was a very clear boundary I set. I will not do that because it stressed me out. Everyone has different things that stress them out, but it stressed me out to go there on a Thursday night. So yeah, so maybe I had some of this going on even then. What do you think?
No, that's a great example because you were certain about it in front, because you were certain about it ahead of time. Then you were much, much more capable of just saying, no, that's outside. But there's a lot of people who go into every situation at work with parents and with colleagues, and they don't have any of those boundaries in their mind ahead of time. The person who has clarity is going to be better off. Now, let me teach you one more thing you could do if you get a little pushback on that. If you get a little pushback on that, the best thing to do to convince people, the best thing to do to persuade people is to tell a story, not to try to name facts. Okay. So facts create arguments. If there's anything we've learned in the last 24 months, stating facts is a great way to start an argument. Stories move people, stories convince people, and stories end arguments. And so if you would get pushback on that, you could say, oh, well, I remember one time I was told, on a Thursday that we were all supposed to bring soup the next day. So I did go out to the grocery store and I couldn't find what I wanted at the first grocery store. So I went to a second grocery store. Long story short, I didn't get home until 9:30 that night, and I was a grouch for the kids the whole next day. We might have had soup for lunch, but the kids got a whole bunch of coal in their baskets because I was a grouch the whole next day. Just tell that story and then stop. And there's no arguing with it. It's your story. And nobody can say, well, Vanessa, you didn't go to 2 grocery stores. It's your story. You own your story. And so if you would state a fact, if you'd be like, well, you're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep, and I didn't get 8 hours of sleep. Now somebody's going to argue with you and say, there's actually sleep cycles. Some people are better off with 7 hours of sleep and you just start an argument. Facts start arguments. Stories move people. And so what you need, if you get in this situation with anything, if you have a parent who's like, oh, I really, or you have a parent who's calling you in the evening, or you have somebody who says, well, can't you just get there a half hour earlier so I can drop my kid off a half hour earlier, something like that. And you're going to say no, couple it with a story if you're getting pushback, and you'll end the argument like nobody's business.
Yeah, I like that because I remember one of the things that parents would always do that really stressed me out and made me feel very uncomfortable and very put upon was the birthday invitations, Pat. Now, you worked with the kids that were a little older, but you did have kids of your own, or you do have kids of your own, so you maybe can relate. But I would, get a call or whatever, check so-and-so's backpack. I put birthday invitations in there. Make sure they go to everybody, but don't give one to Jimmy. I'm like, what part of educating your child does passing out birthday invitations and not inviting Jimmy? I didn't want to do it. And I usually would state up front that I didn't do that kind of thing, but I did find myself doing it occasionally because I just didn't want to upset the parents. And so
that's a great use of a story, Vanessa. So when you call that parent, instead of saying, child psychologists say that that's harmful to Jimmy, just tell a story. Tell a story about somebody who, did it and it turned out well, or time it didn't happen and this is what happened. Just tell a story. And again, there's no arguing with it because it's your story. Yeah. Let me give you one more thing you can do in a situation like this, or like the first situation with going to the grocery store. This is a technique called swim with the fishes. And so to understand this analogy, you really have to understand like a stream or a river that has a current, and the fish can be swimming downstream or the fish can be swimming upstream. So let's picture all the fish swimming downstream. And there's a big school of fish swimming downstream. And that's the parent saying, you have to do this for me. You have to do this for me. You have to do this for me. Now you have 2 choices when you respond or talk to this parent for the first time. One choice is to jump into the water and immediately swim against the parent. And immediately you're going to be in a battle with them. And you're going to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm absolutely not doing that. And you're going to be swimming upstream against the current. You're going to be swimming against the fish. And it's just going to be a lot more difficult for you. A better technique is to jump into the water and swim with the fish for a little while, which means in this conversation, you want to think about agreeing with this parent on a couple of issues. You want to agree with them on a couple of things. Now, you have to find these, and sometimes you have to dig really hard. But you could get on the phone with this. So let's go back to the birthday party invitation thing. And the parent says, please give these out to everybody except Jimmy. So you're going to call this parent, or you're going to catch the parent in the morning, and you talk to the parent. And when you talk to the parent, instead of saying, look, we have a policy, a fact, that we don't do that, and that's just an argument waiting to happen. Or saying, I'm not going to do that. That's a wrong thing to do. You're not being a good parent there. That's swimming against the fish. Instead, what I'd love for you to do is to swim with the fish for a little while. Jump in the water and say, I think in every peer group or in every class, there's some groups that get along and some kids that don't get along, some kids that you look forward to playing with and some kids that you don't look forward to playing with. And any group of people, and I think we agree on that, and any group of people, including this group of kids, there's some kids that are easier to get along with than others. And there's some kids that are naturally drawn to each other and others that are socially a bit behind and socially a bit more awkward. And we certainly have that in this class too. Now, notice what I did there. I agreed with the parent on two fronts without throwing Jimmy under the bus. I'm never going to badmouth one of my students in front of another family. So I can agree with you that, yeah, kids form peer groups. And yeah, I can agree with you that some kids are socially not as advanced or harder to get along with than other kids. So then I can try to turn the whole school of fish. But here's the difference. A lot of people will jump into the water and try to turn the parent immediately. What I want you to do is jump in the water and swim with them a little bit and then slowly try to turn the fish. But it's my experience that one of the things that we're trying to teach kids is that you want to be nice to everyone. That's one of the core values of our school, is that we're nice to everyone. And so we want to make sure that we're teaching that not just with our words, but we're teaching that with our actions as well. The actions, I don't know what you think. Do you think actions teach as strongly as words? Yeah, I do too.
Absolutely.
So here we are with the parent, getting the parent now to agree with us. So I'm asking the parent, do you agree that actions actually teach as much as words do? Good, we agree on that. So I think what we have here is an opportunity. And now I'm going to try to turn the school of fish and go upstream with them. Now, does that work 100% of the time? No. I'm not going to tell you it does. There isn't any technique that I'm going to share today that's going to help you with a parent who just is set in their ways and isn't going to change. But what it does do is increase your chances of success. When you jump in the water and swim with them, when you jump in the water and agree with them on two fronts and then try to get them to agree with you on one thing, you're going to have a much better chance of turning that tide than if you don't do that. So I would not jump right into an argument. I wouldn't state just facts. I would start with a story, and then in a different situation like the one we're talking about, I'd start with agreeing with the parent on two different things close to this issue, and then try to turn the whole school of fish.
That's so interesting, Pat, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, this could apply in real life too, outside the classroom.
Oh, yeah. So this actually comes out of a book called Same-Side Selling, which is the idea that when you're selling somebody something or trying to persuade somebody to do something, you think of yourself on one side of the table and you think of them on the other side of the table. And that naturally creates this, I'm going to beat you and get you to buy this, or I'm going to beat you and convince you of this. So you're on this side and I'm on this side, and one of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. The book Same Side Selling is all about the fact that you're viewing the relationship wrong. You should view the relationship as you and the other person sitting on the same side of the table trying to fight a common problem. Yeah. And so how it relates to us and our parents at our schools is when we're meeting with a parent, not only should we not put ourselves on opposite sides of a table, because that has us front facing, which with an aggressive parent, that's really going to be threatening to them, and they're going to do a power play on you. Now, sometimes you're going to win that power play. I win that power play a lot of times because I'm 6'6" tall and I've got a super deep voice. My wife would be in that situation. She's 5'1" tall and weighs about 100 pounds soaking wet. If she's in that situation, she's going to lose a face-to-face power confrontation. And that's really going to affect her voice. Her voice is going to start wavering and be nervous. That's going to affect her demeanor. It's going to affect her smile. And so, how you change that dynamic is by setting up from the very beginning the physicality of it, that you and I are going to sit on the same side of the table. So, have the chairs set up. If the parent's going to come in and sit down with you, have the chairs on the same side of the table, and you can kind of both face the table and then kind of angle toward each other to have your conversation. You're going to take the power dynamics out of the conversation. And in addition to that, you're going to set a really strong message that it's you and me working against, in this case, working against meanness, working against selfishness, working against hurt feelings, working against all the things that we agree that we're against. And we're working together to find a solution to the birthday party that is working against all of those things. Sometimes the physical dynamics of the meeting
Yeah.
are as important as the words that you say.
That's so important. And thank you for making that point because, immediately my mind went to parent teacher conferences, right?
Yep.
Where we sit across from the table. And in education, I feel like there's a lot of times when we have these adversarial conversations with parents and we feel like we're not being, in their face, but they immediately get, offended because we're talking about their precious little baby, right? And so they can become easily offended. So I think that one simple thing that you just said with not sitting across the table from each other could be so powerful. I really, really like that. That's wow. My mind is just blown. Well, Pat does that regularly. He has a way of just saying things in such a way that makes people's minds blown. But okay, so I think we got a handle on trying not to be confrontational or adversarial with parents.
For sure.
What else can we do? Like I'm thinking specifically, in teaching in the field of education, especially with little kids, Pat, with little kids, so often we're asked to do things because it's for the children, right? It's for the little children. And if you don't do this, you don't like little children. Who are you? And it kind of comes back to you. Are you a good teacher if you say no to this, right? So that you're being asked to like cover a class, right now in this country we have a huge substitute shortage. Some teachers are even driving buses out there, right? So, oh, you don't love children, you don't care about the children if you say no to this. How would you handle that?
So I think the two techniques I want to talk to you about are two situations. One is when you have time and you're prepared for that, and one is when you don't have time and you kind of get blindsided, either by a parent or by a request. And so when you have time, I want to show you a technique called, I don't know, I played this game when I was a kid. Maybe you played this game too, called Two Truths and a Lie, where you
Yes.
name three statements and two of them are true and one of them is
Mhm.
not true and the other person has to figure out which one is true. I call this technique Two Truths and a Truth, because the first thing you're going to do is state two facts that are absolutely true. And then here's what Robert Cialdini's research says. It says that if you get what's called truth momentum. So you're going to state two statements that are absolutely true, and then the third statement is going to be what you want out of this situation, and it's going to be believed as true by everybody in the room because you have truth momentum. And so in this particular situation, you get called and said, "Hey, can you cover this class?" And we don't have any subs, and we just, if you loved kids, you would do this. And they throw
Right.
a guilt trip on you, and they throw, "Oh, good of the team, for the good of the team."
Right,
And
right.
I wouldn't ask this if it wasn't a crisis. And amazingly, it's been a crisis every Friday for the last 6 weeks.
Right.
And so you want to say no to this. Now, again, if you have clarity and you walked into the year, or you walked into this month and said, I'm saying no when that happens, you got a lot better chance. But let's go with two truths and a truth. So the first thing you want to do is state, I have preparation, or I have a class of my own that deserves my full attention during the day.
Mhm.
The truth, nobody argues with it. The substitute problem that we're having is not going to go away immediately. It's not going to go away right now. That's the truth. Everybody agrees with it. Now you've got some truth momentum going. Everybody's nodding. Everybody's agreeing. So the third thing that you say can really be anything you want. Here you could state, so I think you need to come up with a solution that is not, using a teacher who already has other duties going on. Or, so I'm going to say no today because I don't think it's best for my kids. And so it really doesn't matter what you say in that third one. It's going to be believed because you have truth
Mhm.
momentum. So I say this is one that you want to have some time to prepare for, like you're going to be asked or you anticipated being asked, because you do have to think about these two true statements. And only the best people who can make stuff up on the fly can come up with two really good, strong, true statements on the fly. But if you
Mhm.
know, like you're going to go into a meeting on Wednesday and you know you're going to be asked to drive the bus, or you know you're going to be asked to chaperone a field trip you don't want to chaperone, or you know you're going to be asked to make cookies again, you can prepare two true statements. Two true statements are, I've got kids of my own who deserve my attention when I leave work. Another statement would be, we have parents who would love to bake and would love to volunteer, and then give your third solution. And so you get to pick the two true statements. And then
Mhm.
whatever statement you say third, that's the one that all three of them are going to be believed, regardless of what the third one is. And so you get to pick the third one. So this is a really strong technique. And you see it all the time in like political debates. In
Mhm.
political debates, when they're debating about something really controversial, one of the smarter of the two in the debate will stop and say, look, we all love our country and we all believe that no one should be without a home. And then they name the third one, and everybody's just like, "Oh, we believe everything you say," because they believe the first two. If the first
Mhm.
two are undeniably true, people will believe the third one. And you can use this to your advantage in any meeting. You can use it in any discussion. You can use it at home with your spouse. You can use it with your kids. But most importantly, you can use it at work to not get roped into things you don't want to do and not say yes to things that you should be saying no to.
Interesting. Very interesting, Pat. And I hate to make this whole episode about me seeking affirmation, but let me tell you a story.
I can't argue with you, Vanessa. It's a story. If you would have told me facts, I would have argued with you, but you can't argue with a story.
No, no, no. So I'm just wondering if I actually did this without knowing it. I guess that's my thing. So when I was a
People
new
do.
teacher, beg your pardon, Pat?
People do it all the time without
Oh,
noticing. And it happens to you and you don't notice it being done all the time. Some people are doing
yeah.
it intentionally and some are doing it accidentally.
Well, when I was a new teacher, I worked in a small private school in Detroit for a year, and one of the things the school was known for was they had a small student body. Right, they had like 60 kids, K through 12, or no, K through 8. And one of the teachers' responsibilities, it was even in my contract, was that we would have a club of some sort that we did after school, like one day a week or whatever. So that was all fine and good. So the day came, we signed up for the clubs, right? And they had all the clubs out there. And one of them was to host ice skating classes, right? It's Detroit, it's cold, because there was an ice rink about a mile away. And I was like, oh, I love ice skating. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this club. So I did. So one day after school, the principal dropped off some keys in my classroom and she said, these are for the van. And I looked at her and I said, what van and what purpose would I need the van for? And she said, well, you're going to be driving the club, the kids in your club, to the ice rink. And I was about 23 years old and I was not a good driver. Like I knew this. I was honest about
Especially in
this.
Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I said, no, I don't think so. I didn't sign up for that. And she said, well, it's part of the job. And I said, no, I really don't think so. But I know that we have a lot of parents who can drive and a lot of parents who would like to drive. And so we can ask one of them. And she kind of looked at me and said, well, everyone else drives their own students to the club, to their club. And I was like, not me. And so she said, if you can find a parent to drive, then fine. And so I did. And I got a parent to drive this van every Tuesday to the ice rink. And I didn't even realize that until now that it wasn't even an option to say that I would drive the van, first of all. But
So that's a great use of the technique you stated. We have lots of parents who drive. We have lots of parents who would probably love to drive. Now you got two truths out there. So now you
yeah.
state the third one. We should ask one of the parents. And
Okay. All
everybody
right.
nods their heads and agrees with that. It's an amazing technique, and people don't use it to their advantage often enough.
Yeah, I just remember that being an example of when I started setting these boundaries. Like, I am willing to host the club. I'm willing to work after hours, but I am not willing to drive a van full of 5-year-olds across town during rush hour.
Yeah, let me share one more thing, Vanessa, because sometimes you do get blindsided by an ask, you get blindsided by a request, or you get blindsided by a parent who wants to talk about something at the same time that you're
Mhm.
trying to supervise 20 little kids.
Yeah.
There's a technique when you get blindsided with a request, or you're interrupted and you're in the middle of something and somebody wants to do something that affirms the person who's making the request, but also delays your conversation. And
Okay.
and the response is to say to that person, like I was teaching summer school once, and I had 25 kids out in the middle of a field, and we were playing some games, but we were right next to this road, and this parent comes up and wants to start arguing with me about something that I'd done like 3 days ago, and and I'm like, I'm in the middle of class here, got to do something here, and they wouldn't stop. So here's what I said: I didn't say I can't talk to you now,
Mhm.
because that's like you're just going to start an argument with that. What I said is, oh, this is way too important. This is too important for the amount of time that I have right now. Let's you and I set up a time where we can talk and give this issue the attention it deserves. Now, picture the difference between that and saying, I don't have time to talk to you right now. Whether this is a phone call that you receive at night or this is somebody stopping by at an awkward time. Instead of saying, I don't have time for this right now or I'm busy right now, which basically says what I'm doing is more important than what you're thinking about, which causes that person to roar back at you and say, you won't
Mhm.
ignore me, whether that's yelling, whether that's complaining to your boss, whatever it is, they will roar. Instead, you affirm them and say, this is way too important. This is too important for the amount of time that I have right now. So you're affirming them. I
Mhm.
agree. I'm swimming with the fish here. This is really important. Let's set up a time where you and I can give this the attention it deserves. Again, I'm
Mhm.
affirming you. What that does is give you time to get clarity, to have a story, to have two truths and another truth, and to think about how you can swim with the fish, set up the physicality the way you want it. It gives you time to do everything that we've talked about. So when you get blindsided, instead of stumbling through it or telling the other person, I don't have time or this isn't important enough to talk about right now, do just the opposite. Say, this is so important. I want to give it the time that it deserves, and I don't have that time right now. Let's set up a time where we can give it the attention it deserves. That one technique has
Wow.
saved me with so many parents, has saved me from so many situations. And then I have time to prepare, time to get clarity, and time to set it up so I get exactly what I want out of the conversation.
That is amazing. I hope that our listeners got that. Y'all, if you're listening right now, rewind and play that again because that was gold right there. Because as teachers of young children, this scenario that Pat just described happens on a daily basis because this is their little tiny baby that's in your classroom and it's their whole world. This child is their whole world. And every single thing they want to talk to you about is in their mind the most important thing ever. And this happened to me multiple times every single day. So this would have really saved my bacon on numerous occasions over the years. So definitely keep that in mind. And it doesn't have to be that exact scenario. It could be, it could be let's give it the time that it deserves. It doesn't have to be, a face-to-face meeting that you're suggesting.
No,
The teachers are going to be like, I'm going to have 50 of those every day if I do that. it,
no,
it
it
could be
doesn't have
something
to be
else.
that. I think the key message here is that I'm not saying this isn't important. What I'm saying is
Right.
this is important. Again,
Yeah.
it's similar to swim with the fish. Like if the first thing you
Mhm.
do is not attack them, but even go against them or say, if they come in and say, "Well, I need you to pay more attention to my child," and you're like, "I
Mhm.
got 25 of these. I got
Right.
25 kids like that's the wrong message. Like what you
Mhm.
want to say is this is so important. I would agree with them. First of all, we want to give individual attention to every child.
Mhm.
I agree. Your child needs attention. It's very much similar to all the other kids that I have. I mean, start by agreeing and
Mhm.
affirm the importance of their request. I take this very seriously, and I want to make sure I have the time to deal with this and the time to respond to you that is going to give this the attention it deserves. I just think that's a better approach. So whether that ends up in a face-to-face meeting, which it rarely probably will, it'll probably end up in a
Right.
phone call, but it'll end up in a phone call at a time that you're not frazzled. It'll end up with a phone call at a time that you're prepared. It might end up with an email, but an email
Mhm.
that you had time to compose, time to think
Right.
about, and time to really put together, or a
Yeah.
text message that you had time to think about. So I just think it's a good way to get out of that situation where you feel like you're backing up. Instead, you have a chance to put your
Yeah.
best foot forward.
I love it. That's such helpful pieces of advice you have shared with us today, Pat. Are there any parting thoughts you want to share with us before we go? Anything at all that
I
we
have
didn't
one
cover?
last thought, Vanessa, for
Mhm.
you and everybody else listening. Stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for saying no. You
Mm.
do not have to apologize for staying physically healthy. You do not have to apologize for staying mentally healthy. You do not have to apologize for building margin into your life so that you are there for the unexpected need of any child or any adult who needs you at that moment. And when you apologize for doing the very things that will keep you physically healthy, mentally healthy, and build in the margin in your life that you need so you can serve others in their biggest time of need, I think you set the wrong tone for your year. I think you set the wrong message for your parents, your kids, and your colleagues. And I think you're denying yourself one of the things that you most deserve, which is permission to say no, permission to be healthy, and permission to be happy.
Wonderful. As always, Pat, it's always such a pleasure to chat with you about these tiny topics, but they're so powerful. And you are always just a wealth of information. Tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to continue the conversation at all. Or I know we've already talked a little bit about your book, but how can we connect with you if we want to?
The best way to connect with me is through my website, patquinn.com, patquinn.com.
Awesome. Thanks again, Pat. It's always a pleasure. And thanks to all of our listeners out there as well. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin, and this is Pat Quinn.